Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. It is epiCHATS coming at you with epiCHATS number 9 on the 15th of September. It is a very warm evening in Germany, but it is a nice and beautiful one. And I hope that wherever you are, you're having a good time as well, that you're not hungry, tired, or have any other needs that keep you from enjoying the podcast that you may be listening to at this point in time. What's going on, guys? I hope you're doing fine. Listen, the first thing I got to talk to you guys about is the fact that epiCHATS number 9 does not feature a guest name on the title because I don't have a guest for you this episode, and I'm very sorry about that. But having said that, with the EG is announcement number 2, with what that means with PPD not being on the roster, and a few of the things he said in the last couple of interviews, I think we still have some good shit to talk about this epiCHAT. Now, before we get into the topics themselves, I did want to make sure to say a few things. I was really hesitant to just record an epiCHAT without a guest, but there have been a lot of people that have just been voicing the need and the request for podcasts for Dota 2 content. And because I myself am my own harshest critic, I figured instead of just going and recording a podcast and then just not uploading it because I'm not happy with the way it turned out, I would just have to suck it up and record it and upload it for you guys. And even if just 10 people listen to it, it will still have to do. I will just need to keep going and keep improving until the shit I speak about is relevant for more people and the podcast actually can take off. That's the way that we're going to do it. Of course, I'm going to do my best to keep the solo epiCHATs at a minimum, but guys, getting Dota 2 pros on podcasts is fucking difficult. A few years ago it was very easy because the Dota 2 pro was also a very regular Dota 2 content consumer, and now with the amount of money and tournaments and just growth that has hit the scene, it's just an enormous shift that has taken place in the way that a Dota 2 professional participates in the content type of spectrum of the whole scene. So it's very interesting that a few years ago I could just chat with the pros on Skype like they were my friends from Germany that I play Dota with every night, or speedrunners, or whatever. And now I don't even get a reply from a lot of these guys, and while I do understand it, and while it's totally fine, it is just amazing how things have changed over the last little while. So having said that, I do have a few guys that have agreed to come onto the show, but not now, not for the next week, and not even for this month. It's going to be for the coming months. But it is huge names that you all know, and names that you all will want to listen to. So I'm very happy about the kind of yeses that I have received. Then I think before the end of this weekend, I'm going to have epiCHAT number 10 with a guest that I'm very excited to speak to, but I'm not going to announce him because I have had it happen time and time again that people agree to come onto the show and then they would just ignore me, which is shitty. I don't like it. I can understand that we've all done this type of thing, but for a show, it's always just very frustrating because I get so happy and I start researching and I start, writing into my blog, my block and my Word documents, and then all of a sudden it's all for naught. So it's saddening, and there have been a few people and a few great epiCHATs that you guys have missed out on just because people just didn't feel like it for whatever reason. At any rate, we're going to be talking about the EG switch. Some of you may be irritated right now just because you're listening to me and not a pro, which is in part also my fault because I just did not make sure over the past couple of years that I bombard you with my opinion and voice regularly enough that you're just used to it and you just accept it like you would with other personalities out there. So I'm aware of the fact that I have a lot of catching up to do, and for everyone that's still listening to my solo rambles up to this point, konnichiwa. That does not mean, I thought that meant thank you, but konnichiwa. Arigato. EG, PPD, not on the team. The roster is Universe, Crit, Zai, Shomail, and Arteezy. Interesting, very interesting. Before we're going to talk about why that's interesting, and with Crit as captain, we're going to speak about PPD because in his past couple of interviews, he said a few things about his captaining style, how it was received by his team. It's very insightful because he spoke. Let me just get right into it. He spoke about the time that the first installment of EG that featured Arteezy on it. At that point in time, so before TI1, before the first TI that EG won, PPD said his captaining style was the kind of iron fist dictator type of Hitler, you have to do this kind of style. So what he would do is he would make calls, he would insist on his calls being listened to, and he would just whip his team through the game. And if you did not listen or made mistakes, he would let you know what he thought about that. I think at that time he would still consult with Fear from time to time, especially in critical situations, but for the most part, he had a very clear vision of how he wanted the game to go. Fear was just type of there for stability and for support when the going got very tough, but that is essentially the style. And Peter said, as I said, one of his latest interviews, that type of style, captaining style, led to friction between him and Arteezy, because Arteezy did not appreciate and like that type of leadership style very much, and he would kind of complain a bit from time to time about that leadership style, because I can only assume that perhaps it didn't feel very nice to be talked to in maybe a kind of rough way and not in a very nice way. But one thing that it certainly was, it was effective. And let's talk about why it was effective. For many of you, it may be obvious, but when you have one guy with a clear vision and a lot of confidence in his decisions, making these calls, and his 4 teammates listen to every single call that he makes, regardless of what they think about it, because they don't think about it, they just do it, and they do it in the context of the role that's been assigned to them. And then you have these 5 guys that listen to this one guy and his every call, and they perform the commands with confidence. At that point in time, it does not matter one fucking bit if the decision PPD made was the first best, the second best, or the third best. If you have 5 world star level players executing the third best option of a given situation with utter confidence, then it will take a really fucking strong team to be able to stand up to that. And that is kind of where the magic lies, in my opinion. Obviously, PPD is good enough to make the best calls in most situations, but you get the idea. If you have one guy, it's just efficient. You don't have a lot of ineffectiveness and inefficiencies in the communication, because you have one guy who has one idea and he decides what his team does in a given situation and he calls it out. The team does it. There may be, in some situations, a quick check with Fear, and then they would go. So very efficient, very fast, but maybe a bit wearing on the players, which, if I may throw it in there from the side as a kind of author's note, is why it is so important to have communication specialists on the team, especially ones that understand the pressures and the lingo and the way that young kids speak to young kids when they're in higher pressure situations, which is exactly why, here comes the pitch for my personal self, I want to work as this communication specialist in Pro Dota 2 teams, because this is my fucking jam. And if they had a person there that's not only a coach but also a communication specialist just for this function, to be sure to, after scrims, after official matches, be able to mediate between Peter and Arteezy and all other teammates to make them understand, the reason PPD speaks that way is because all these positives that you see, high efficiency, a lot of confidence, quick reactions, you're moving in unity, and you would, these talks, this understanding that you would garner and kind of nourish inside each and every player would lead to a professional understanding of why the dynamic in a team needs to be a certain way, why a captain in a team needs to behave a certain way, and it would just overall turn out fucking amazing, in my opinion. But apparently they did not have these mechanisms in place. There may have been some other things and issues that popped up during that time, but it just didn't work out, and PPD lost one of his best players, and apparently the kind of feedback he got at that point in time was, yo, the way that you captain is just not good. And obviously he knew that a lot of it was the best way to do it, but he got the feedback that certain nuances of it were just not okay, because if they were, then the player would not have left the team. Of course there's going to be other factors that played into it, but I'm not going to talk about those right now. You know what I'm talking about anyway. So what does that do to PPD? I can imagine, and that's another thing that he talked about in his latest interview, one of his latest interviews, is that he then adapted and changed up his captaining style to be not an asshole. And that then led to certain inefficiencies. I cannot tell you exactly what those inefficiencies were, which is why I thought having PPD on epiChat 9 would have been amazing, but we do not have that luxury yet. We need more views, we need more exposure, and then we may be big enough to be like, yo, PPD, get on here, or whoever the big captain is at the time. However, I can imagine that some of these inefficiencies and conflicts were of the sort, or changes, inefficiencies were something like PPD thinking, all right, I have some things that I observe that I think are shitty right now, but I'm not going to do the thing that I used to do, which is just say don't do this, do that, but instead do it in a different way, which may take longer, or just not say anything at all, which would lead to just bottling up the whole thing, which kind of is okay in short term, but long term it will lead to problems. That's one possibility. The other possibility is that PPD himself may not have this unwavering confidence in his decisions anymore, where he may throw out an option, but bearing in mind what his captaining style has had as a result in terms of his roster in the past, he may not make the call in the same confident ways in the past, or he may just, instead of saying we're going to do this, guys, he may check in with fear more often than necessary if the decision that he wants to take is really the one that they should take, and that could lead to the decision taking a longer time, and seconds are, very important in Dota. And what I can also imagine is that if a certain very specific type of insecurity did sneak its way into PPD's captaining style and mind at that specific phase of his captain career, I can also imagine that fear sensed it, that him being the second pillar of EG also noticed that he is getting asked a lot more often, and the captain that he hears talking to him at the moment is not as kind of clear cut and like a sniper that just, he sees the head and he just goes for it. He would just be thinking, is that the right guy? Can you double check the wind conditions? I'm not quite sure. I don't know. Did you clean the barrel? I've stuff like that just in Dota context. So as PPD said, there were certain inefficiencies that came up and the performance just dropped a bit. And then I think in a Yahoo interview at International, that was before they got eliminated, that was when they were definitely top 3 and before they went into their last game, he said that they are working, I think it was this interview, but I may be wrong, he said that he wants to go back to that more strict asshole type of style. So I think that he realized that while his play style and captaining style may have been less wear and tear on his team, the result would not be as good and as world class as his other style was. So, I mean, they still made top 3 and they still are a world class team, but when you play on a team such as EG, you are not playing to be top 3 of TI. You play to be the motherfucking best, undisputed number 1. So I can imagine that he realized that he needs to be that strict, confident fucking decision sniper, but that there would need to be mechanisms in place that make sure that the wear and tear that this puts on his teammates does not lead to serious type of damage. And I think that is the way to go. you need a captain that has supreme confidence in his team and in himself and in his calls, and he throws those calls out there in game, and his entire team just does it. And if he says things in the wrong tone and maybe uses a few words that are hurtful and not appropriate, then it is your job as a teammate to suck it up and understand that this is a war and that you need to just take it and move on. And then after the match, you're going to have plenty of opportunities, if you have the proper specialists in place, to work through these things, to make sure that this kind of little crack in the brakes does not lead to a fatal accident when you go for the next ride. Very interesting development and very interesting career in terms of his captaining career. It's been a great development to follow. I have great admiration for PPD because A, he's world class, and B, he gives so much insight into this world. I mean, I can imagine that we could speak at equal length about Puppy and his thoughts and his philosophy switches and what he now thinks is the best way to go about the whole thing, but he just does not he's not out there as PPD is, which is fine, but I mean, fuck Puppy. God damn it, man. I would love to get some insight from that man. But these are the things why PPD is, in my mind, such a boss. And it's been interesting, and it's going to be a big challenge for EG without him. And I wish him all the best. So let me know what you guys think about this PPD leaving the Dota 2 pro player arena, stepping into a kind of management role where he's probably going to have just a guy that's very experienced, is going to teach him the basics, and then once he has the basics down and he has the minimum required experience for his position, I think he's just going to be fine as fuck. He's going to be tearing up whatever function that he has in EG. But for the moment, I am not sure if when PPD finds himself in the just quote-unquote normal working environment, if he's going to be satisfied with that, because he has lived the life of a pro Dota 2 player. I can't imagine that he would be sitting there on his laptop drinking a Starbucks coffee. Everything would be fine, don't get me wrong. He would get good pay, he would have awesome colleagues, he would be sitting in a great office, but he would still think, God damn it, you know, why am I not on the plane right now on my way to I don't know where, competing with my boys? That's what I think is going to be the interesting part, how PPD adapts to his new role and his new environment. That's going to be interesting to follow. So stay tuned for updates on that. Now, let's talk about that new EG roster. The thing that I'm going to be interested in is to see how well Crit transitions into the captain position, because he has been known to also take up a bit of space on the map when it comes to farm, but Zai has also been known to be a kind of expensive support, in that, you know, casters were regularly surprised about the amount of farm and items that Zai would have for a support at a given time in the game. Arteezy also extremely farm efficient, very expensive on the map, and it's, you know, there's only so much gold to go around on the map. So now looking at this lineup, I can see several constellations, but the question is, where is team, you know, this new EG lineup gonna find their balance? What kind of farm distribution is going to work well for them, and what is their general farming distribution and hence play style going to end up looking like? Because we have no idea what exactly Crit's philosophy is going to be. We can probably see a lot of influence from the OG days and a lot of that philosophy, but how is he going to be adjusting that philosophy based on the completely new players that he's going to be playing with? So that's what I'm very, very interested in finding out, because I can see Sumail obviously playing a very active role in the early stages of the game. So now, just theory crafting a bit, I would love to see Sumail play a high impact mid hero that goes for early rotations, which is going to be controversial because I'm not sure, you know, a lot of pros have talked about the fact that rotations and ganks onto lanes are not as profitable as they used to be in the past. So you would have a lot more babysitting in mid lane with a support that would come in once in a while, but you would not see a Storm Spirit that much anymore as you would, in the old glory days where they would go for Bloodstone very quickly and just destroy everyone, because the few ganks that they did on the side lanes just paid off so well that they would be able to get that, I don't know, 2-minute Bloodstone. So it's going to be very interesting to see. But just theory crafting away, Sumail, high impact, space creating, ganking mid hero, then Arteezy, a fast, a farm effective carry that is also able to join in on team fights relatively quickly. For some reason I was thinking about anti-mage that goes for Vladimir's offering here. Then Universe, I could imagine Universe being the guy where the two supports also kind of get the space when it comes to farm priority that they may want to take for themselves if our kind of thoughts on them being more expensive supports actually end up being correct. So I can imagine that the fact that Sumail will be more active and ganking on the map, that will create some farm potential for others, let's just say others. The fact that Universe may need to actively take a bit of a step back and share farm on the map with his two supports. I think this could be enough for a farming style such as Zai's in his glory days as a support to pay off. So again, Sumail creating early pressure, Arteezy high priority on farming it up with the option to also join in if it is required. This is going to also depend heavily on him just being correct in his assessments of whether or not he's really needed. Also his captain being able to make the correct call in these situations, and that I also think requires a lot of trust. And this is what I think is going to be the most important thing. And if an organization is able to foster that type of relationship among their very young players, then it's going to be evil geniuses. It's just such a perfect star-studded lineup with so many of the prerequisites necessary to make it work just present. So Universe will just continue playing as he has been, maybe with a bit less farm than he has been used to. And then the two biggest question marks are going to be, how do Crit and Zai work together, and how is that all going to work out? Now that's just my view of EG, how they could work out in the future. I'm going to be interested to see how my assessment and theory works out in the end. What do you think? How is EG going to play it? How do you see this team in action? Do you see Sumail not ganking as much as I just said I would like to see him gank? Do you see him a bit more static in mid? Do you see him even, I have no idea, maybe he's playing carry, this is all just off the top of my head. So how do you see this team working out? I read a lot of people feel triggered by this lineup. What are your thoughts on it in general? I really want to hear. Tweet at me, guys. Let me know.